Hey guys, this is Katrina with Group 29 with Emily, Jaden, Monica, Trenton, and Aubrey, and myself, and we're covering the fall. So things about human nature are revealed in Genesis 1 and 2, and one of them is we are created in God's image and given dominion. So it's human nature that we are given dominion over everything God has created, and this is said in Genesis 1:26. And in Genesis 1:26 it says, "Then God said, let us make man in our image, for our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." And another thing that we have that was given to us was we are created to take care of God's creation. So it's human nature to take care of the earth, which is God's creations, like other humans, fish, livestock, plants, everything that God created. And this is from Genesis 2:15. And Genesis 2:15 says, "The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work and to keep it." So that was the start of God saying, okay, this is what you need to do. You need to take care of my creations. And he put man in the Garden of Eden to take care of it. So that was the start of all of that. And in the book, it says that we are made to worship God and follow what he tells us. So the book says, he commanded humanity to exercise dominion on the earth and serve and keep the garden. So just like I said, Genesis 1:26 and Genesis 2:15, we're given dominion and created to take care of God's creations. And then it also says we are made to worship God. Humans were created to know and worship God by loving him and obeying his commands.
A quick read through Genesis 3 shows us there were many consequences to the fall for humanity. The main one being that mankind lost their unlimited and full access to God within the garden. They also lost their access to the garden itself, and outside of the garden, mankind experienced a great many hardships, and nothing was just handed to them. Now everything they had to work for. And there were different consequences for men than were for women. For women, they would have pain during childbirth, and for men, they would have difficulty working the ground in order to provide.
Evil is everywhere. We're constantly sinning. Nobody is perfect. And those who think that evil is okay and nothing will happen to them, God makes sure to make us realize that at the end of the day, we're all going to die eventually. Nobody could escape death. At the end of the day, everyone will pay for their mistakes. And organization, the Sheer Love International is an organization that will help people find guidance. It will help with guidance and will help find God's love and God's path. Therefore, they will understand that they are never alone and they will never be alone. And those who committed sex trafficking or any other dehumanizing action will pay for it eventually. So Sheer Love is a good organization because it will deliver guidance, and that's what everyone needs in this world, guidance.
How would atheism view human nature, human purpose, and human flourishing? Well, if you look at it from a Christian point of view, we resource in God. And without a relationship with him as a human, we cannot flourish properly. So if you take it from an atheism point of view, it's like they see things in their own direction. They review on just the basic view, everything given to them, what they can see, not what they believe, or in a sense bringing to their life. Meaning physically and emotionally, having the resources you need along the way is something that provides a challenge for them. In Genesis 3, where Adam and Eve eat from the tree of knowledge, their eyes are open, so they're seeing it from a bigger perspective. From an atheism point of view, it's you're learning from what you believe in, not what others would necessarily believe in. So just having like certain circumstances come together, you're seeing like what can be done and what can't be done. So to flourish, I feel like in the way that the text was, it's like they have to go above and beyond and to have just a certain purpose. We're not going off God's purpose, they're going off their own purpose to make something of themselves. So the view kind of changes, and just suddenly like they're like, we're all just about like what we normally do, like what God, they don't see how God cursed us where we had to have labor given because of Adam, and then everything like birth and stuff, the pains for Eve. It's like we just believe in that because of what we have to do to survive day to day. But from a Christian point of view, everything happened for a reason, for God's plan.
Does God allow us to suffer? God allows us to suffer because it's kind of a give and take system to show that as God's children, we're able to overcome the obstacles He puts in front of you. And it's not supposed to be so much as punishments, like as we reviewed in class, like with Adam and Eve, their punishment was like everything, like childbearing will be horrible, other chores, and that. But before like they went against His will and ate the fruit of knowledge, they were completely loved by God, still are completely loved, but they were not frowned upon yet because they didn't know anything yet until they gained knowledge. And through that, God didn't see a reason to punish them yet. But when He did, it wasn't a sign of Him hating them or disregarding them in any way. It was just more so in a way of, here's like a punishment, here's a slap on the wrist, and hopefully you can overcome it and still show me that you're going to be useful and like worthy to me down the line. It's basically why God allows us to suffer, because through every dark hole, there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
I am covering why God allows suffering, part 2. While He does love us and we are His children, however, from the beginning when God created heaven and earth in Genesis 3, after Eve ate from the tree and then shared with Adam and he ate from it as well, God then punished them. He punished them and also the world for eternity as to a result of their consequences of what happened, and that included things such as childbirth. You can't go days without eating, just simple things like that. Well, simple but not simple, because it does cause consequences later down in life. And while He doesn't want any of His children to suffer or to be in pain mentally, physically, or harm themselves or anything like that, sometimes He does allow things to happen because He understands that we have to make it through things. You have to sometimes fall in order to stand up and come closer to Him. And while He doesn't cause it to happen, He will allow it to happen in a way. He doesn't sit there and go, okay, I'm gonna let this happen. But sometimes as His children, He lets us be children and go and do things on our own and let us come back and come to Him and be like, God, I am sorry, or I need you at this point. And that's just how He is. So while He allows it, He doesn't cause it, nor does He want it for us.
We chose human trafficking as a consequence of the fall. So God made life in the Garden of Eden a paradise, but man sinned, and that sin infects our culture today. And that is from an article talking about human trafficking and how it relates back to Christianity. So man sinned in the garden, so God had put man in the garden to take care of it, but he sinned, so that from that point on, we have always sinned. It was human nature to sin as well. Is a bad thing, but from then to now, we have sinned, and a huge sin, what we chose, was human trafficking. So it is said God created man and woman to be in a faithful relationship as companions, and sex trafficking is the total opposite of that. So human trafficking creates dehumanization, and like anybody that's in human trafficking, mostly women, which women are God's creations, but any person, child, woman, man, adult, teenager, anybody, it creates dehumanization because there's no consent, there's no taking, you just don't take care of God's creations in human trafficking. It's just like these people are objects, not humans, and they are not treated as humans as God intended us to treat on one another. This is beautiful creations, and they are not treated as beautiful creations. So all humans are created in the image of God and deserve a basic dignity and should not be dehumanized, exploited, or marginalized, which is all what happens in human trafficking. They are dehumanized, exploited, used, and that's a huge sin that dehumanizes people as a whole.
So I am also covering the part 2, why and how is human trafficking a consequence of the fall. So while human trafficking is very poorly looked upon and it happens everywhere, and sex trading and sex slavery is everywhere, unfortunately it does happen in our world. And while nobody desires it, it does happen. Well, take that back. There is people who desire it, and those are the people who participate in it. Not necessarily the girls or the men who are used as the sex objects, but as the individuals who pay or participate in the selling of these humans. And the reason that it is so unholy and so inhumane is because God says that sexual intercourse is not only a fall to ourselves, a fall to others, the other participant, and humans in general, but it is also something heartbreaking to him as he sees that his children are falling away and not only breaking themselves physically, but they're also breaking themselves in a very soul-like way. They're literally breaking molds of their soul. So with that, when one does participate in human trafficking, it's breaking that sin, it's breaking God's heart. And if you're the one who's acknowledging it and going with it, it's only a consequence of the fall of what happened, because you're allowing yourself to be a sinner and you're taking part in one of the largest sins in the Bible.
So we chose the organization Sheer Love International as a Christian worldview organization that helps human traffickers, and they have a video on their homepage that explains what they do, and what it also explains that they create a safe environment for their students to find healing from the pain of their past and give them freedom to dream. So to find healing of the pain of their past, they use the video showed them opening up their Bibles and worshiping, singing, listening to sermons and listening to preachers as well. So it's kind of a long stretch, but I personally think that all of that is them teaching a Christian worldview of how they can deal with their pain and talk to God about their pain. They also say that they provide personal mentoring, spiritual guidance, and friendships that will last a lifetime. So that there again, spiritual guidance. And the mission section of their homepage, they do state that it is faith-based.
The organization Share Love International does a great many things for helping many different people, all of them in need. The primary way that they help those in need is by providing education to those who otherwise would not be able to get it. Another way that they help people is they have a donation portion of their website, and most of the donations go to people who are unfortunately in situations like a brothel, and they provide them with a night out and a meal. Depending on the size of the donation, will decide how many people and how long they're able to stay away.
How does this organization use a God-centered worldview? Shared Love International is it's an organization that provides support for people who have been sex trafficked. They help them educationally, economically, and most importantly, spiritually.
Staying on a God-given view path and staying to the righteous path of God, it allows people to prevent themselves from temptation and risk of sin. An example of the article for the original sin, it provides a very key point that I like to touch upon, which was how Vegas is called Sin City. Vegas is usually called Sin City because people do adultery, theft, other things that are like considered to be against the Ten Commandments, so then that would be considered bad for the Ten Commandments, and just breaking that overall, which is just like frowned upon because you're not following the righteous path of God and staying to like the virtues of avoiding sin. And through that, the article really does explain, and what I kind of take away from that is that through sins there's redemption, and without sins you can't ever redeem yourself, and that's not God's image of like his children, is that not everyone's gonna be perfect. Therefore that's why there's temptation, there's